Hey, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, founder and the host, and we so appreciate you being here. I'm joined in studio today by Richard Neusch. Richard is one of my dear, dear friends.
Best friend.
Best friend, okay, we'll say it. No, I was thinking we met each other about 15, 16 years ago and have just become very, very close. Richard and I are going to talk today about something that really doesn't get brought up a lot, but it affects a man deeply. It affects the way we view ourselves, the way we view our life, the way we approach relationships. And we're going to use some terminology here that might be foreign to a few of our listeners. But to begin with, one of the things I love so much about you and over the years is the impact you have had in so many people's lives in this region and in our community. And you do it with such a humility, you know. And Richard's been called a father of many, and countless. And that's something that you have, is you carry this father's heart. And as we talk to the men about examining their lives and taking honest appraisal, right, and then living with intentionality, one of the big things, or the most critical things, is our identity as fathers, which means we also have to have an identity as sons.
Yes.
And there's so much here. But we were talking about the term orphan and orphan spirit. And this is going to be new to a lot of people who are listening. But I think this is critical. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what an orphan spirit is, as it affects a man.
Sure. Well, David, as you know, I believe, pause. Am I to look at you? Or?
You can look up if it's something that's necessary.
Okay. And you know this, David. We were all created for significance. We were. We all know it. Kids, when they're young, they don't want to be a garbage collector.
Yeah, some do.
Some do. But they want to be superheroes.
Yes, that's true.
From day one. They were wired for significance. And to me, one of the things that steals that, short circuits that, almost more than anything else, is jealousy.
Really?
As you know, recently I was on a trip and spent quite a bit of time just hanging out with the Lord. And he started talking to me personally about some of the things in my heart, but it all centered around this whole thing of jealousy, and went back to where it started. And this is so interesting. In heaven, you had God and the angels and all of this, and then something shifted. And Lucifer, who was the head angel in charge of worship, changed his mind, so to speak. And I want to read that story in Isaiah 14. I had it, and it's this. It says, "How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn? You have been cut down to the earth. You who have weakened the nations, but you said in your heart," and this is where I believe it started, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the recesses of the north." And then this is key. He said, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." I don't think Satan started out with an evil intent, because he said, "I will make myself like the Most High God," who was amazing. But what happened, he saw all the worship and the praise and the accolade that God got. And Lucifer even led it. And then he says, "I want to be like that." I believe that's where jealousy was the first non-beneficial thing that entered into the universe. It was jealousy.
Wow.
And that jealousy then, as it began to develop in his heart, produced pride, produced separation, produced all kinds of things. And I want to start with this verse that is so amazing. And I read it to you before, and it actually shocked me. James says in James chapter 3, verse 16, he says the most amazing things. He said, "For where jealousy and self-ambition," that's this whole significance, exist, that's the self-ambition is significance apart from God.
Okay. All right.
Where jealousy and self-ambition exist, there is disorder. Things are completely out of God's order, and every evil thing.
So many of our followers and listeners are not believers. They don't share our faith. But I think as you're talking about jealousy, and then I hear self-ambition, we're told, and we should be striving for excellence.
Yes.
Right? Each man here, each man and woman, we, for our own kids and our grandkids, we want them to strive for excellence. So ambition in and of itself is a good thing.
Yes.
But what seems to me to creep in is where, and I'll throw a word in here with jealousy, I think goes hand in glove, and that's comparison. And I've seen, Richard, where in my past, but in guys that I work with, is when they start comparing themselves to other guys, their successes. Or it could be a guy you're comparing, saying, at least I'm not as bad as he is,
Yeah.
I'm better than this so-and-so. But comparison opens that door for jealousy, doesn't it?
It really does. It's one of the key components, really, of jealousy. And so whether you're a believer in Jesus Christ or not, this idea of significance is good, but James is talking about a self-made man.
Right.
When he mentions self-ambition. And whether you're a follower of Christ or not, everyone knows in their heart that they are not completely sufficient in themselves. They're a part of something greater.
Right.
And they need others. But this whole jealousy thing separates us and makes us stand alone.
And we've talked about that so often on our episodes here on the podcast, the danger of isolation.
Yes.
And you and I, we've got a good friend. He doesn't like it when I bring up John Wayne because he really respected John Wayne and all these things. But there is this persona that's been created, of this isolated man who doesn't need anybody else. He can do it all on his own, and that's not just a lie. That's a dangerous lie, right? Because that's where we fall into, areas where things can creep in, like especially things like comparison and jealousy.
Well, it's really interesting, David, when Satan said, I want to be like God. I want to ascend above this. What he was saying is, I no longer want God to be the ruler of my heart, to be my father. And so in essence, that's the very definition of an orphan. Someone not of their own choosing, but does not have that family tie, that father. And so because of that, he impacted Adam and Eve to choose the same thing.
Right.
And we know that the orphan identity came from Satan to Adam and Eve, and from there to the whole human race.
I think this is important because those of you who might not share our faith, one of the key component of our faith is not that we try to do good or we're not, we're better than others, because that's comparison, but it's the surrender to God as Father, the intimacy to know God as Father, right? So
Yes.
this identity as sons comes into a man. So many of us, so many men that you and I both have worked with over the years, they really struggle with the whole idea of a father.
Yes. I think Satan's number one scheme is to distort, pervert, and lie about the true identity of God as Father.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's it. And so when Jesus came, he came to reveal a good Father.
Yes.
That was his job. He said, I have finished the work that I came to do. And that was before he went to the cross.
Yeah.
In John 17:4. He came specifically to reveal a good Father. So much so, David, Jesus said some of the craziest things in Matthew 7. And this one's a hard one for me. He basically said, you, at your very best, looks like evil compared to how good the Father is. Now, I have two phenomenal kids, and I had several rock star moments as a dad. I mean, I nailed it.
Yeah.
And God said, my Father is so good that it makes that look evil.
That's such an interesting revelation, if you want to use that word, is because what ends up happening, and what a lot of you who are listening, you think of faith as a religion, because religion is a spirit in itself that kind of has come in to replace the intimacy of a father-child, a father-son relationship. And all of a sudden it comes in, and now you're under all these rules, and you're under all this structures and measuring, am I good enough? Am I bad enough? Am I better than him? Am I, and again, that's comparison.
Yeah.
And jealousy can sneak into that. But what we're talking about is that you can be secure in a father's love. In the father's love. Yeah.
I actually had lunch with a gentleman yesterday, and he had an encounter with the Father about a month ago and has been weeping and crying ever since. And it's just like, my life has completely changed.
Yeah.
So we talk about how do we maintain that?
Yeah.
And I go back to Jesus. Jesus, and it's in John 8, he basically says, I live from the pleasure of my Father.
Wow.
And so we talked about it at lunch yesterday. And I said, I won't tell you his name. I said, the key is to let the Father's pleasure over you just continue to wash. Because we don't live for his pleasure because of the finished work of Christ our Savior, but we live from that place of pleasure. And he has several kids. They're mostly grown now, but we talked about it. I said, when your kids were young, they lived for your pleasure. They longed to see your approving eyes, your loving eyes. They live for that. They long for that. We're no different. And so when you boil down so much of life, I believe what anchors our hearts to face anything is knowing that our Father is pleased, that we live from that place of pleasure.
Yeah, it's so good.
Oh.
But as you're saying that, the reality is so many people, and specifically talking about guys here, but so many people did not have an experience with a good father, right? We in the world today, right now, we lead the world in fatherless homes. The unmeasurable thing is absentee fathers. The dads who are in the homes and checked out. When I grew up, it was very common. My dad was a World War II vet, and good guy. Everyone loved him. He was just a community leader. Owned business in town, and everyone loved my dad. Big personality, but he wasn't engaging in his family. Right? He was busy, and that's how he believed he was supposed to show his love and his responsibility, right, in taking care of us. And he did a good job of that. But there's guys who feel that their fathers didn't really love them, or they weren't worth being invested in, And I know this is a big reason why introducing our faith as one from a father's love and a father's acceptance and a father's desire for you is such an important key. Because otherwise you're just going to be performing, hoping that at the end of your life you get a attaboy and a ticket into heaven,
David, counselors, all of them, and psychologists will tell you that 90% of the problems they see in their clients all go back to father wounds.
Yeah.
They really do. And the enemy knows that. And so he works to distort and pervert that. Well, going back to the whole jealousy thing, that orphan identity, and I know earlier you used the word orphan spirit. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it is actually an identity, because John 14:18, Jesus said, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. He didn't speak that in an orphanage, but he understood that every person born because of Adam carries that identity in their life. And so one of the first words a child learns is mine. Yeah. But that orphan identity, the very foundation of it is jealousy. The whole orphan identity, an orphan, means they have no name.
Well, yeah. They don't belong.
They don't belong.
Yeah.
They don't have an inheritance. They don't have a history. They don't have a future. They don't have provision. That's why it says where jealousy and selfish ambition, everything becomes about them.
Right.
And then Jesus, and I love this, Jesus said, I won't leave you as orphans. I will come to you. And then in Romans 8:15, I'll read that to you. Romans 8. For you have not received a spirit of slavery leading to fear again, but you've received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry, Abba, Father, Abba, Daddy. So what he's saying here, everyone was born with an orphan identity. But because of Christ's sacrifice, it says that we've received the spirit of adoption. Everyone who comes into the kingdom of God is adopted. And you probably know this. I can disown my 2 natural kids legally. If I have an adopted child, I cannot do that. It is the law.
Well,
and so what he's saying here, I've chosen you.
That's right.
I'm
That's
adopted.
See, I think, Richard, you're hitting it right there. Is so many. What we all need is we need to know that we're seen and we're valued.
Yes.
But more importantly, is that we're chosen.
We're chosen.
And that's the true essence of following Christ and in our faith that we talk about. Because again, if your faith is based on you performing, that's really a slave works mentality. And it's not a chosen mentality at all, And I think that's such a key thing, because so often when we see men as they progress and they're raising their families, and so many guys, I'm just so proud and so grateful to the men that I walk with, even when they came from a bad family situation or no father, they're making decisions saying, I'm not going to allow that to continue, right? They're going to do their best to be a better dad. You see all that. And yet, when I work with them on just them personally, they're still operating from a position where they're not chosen, they're distanced, and they're wounded.
And that's why this whole thing of adoption is so important.
Yeah.
It's more than being just chosen. That's so key. It is not only do I choose you, you belong here. Mm-hmm. And then in Hebrews, he said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you.
Yeah. And see, it gives you a confidence, doesn't it? I mean, you don't have to fall into jealousy and comparison, because you know who you are and you know whose you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Bible is full of stories of the consequence of jealousy. I mentioned earlier, before we started this, the first sin after the garden was when Cain slew Abel because he was jealous of his sacrifice. He was jealous of the approval that he received, and he couldn't take it, so he killed him.
Wow.
And then you have the story of Saul and David. Saul's the first king. He's this amazing guy. And it was going well for him until he heard the women singing, Saul has killed his thousands, David his 10,000s. He was actually a pretty good king before that. That point of jealousy entered into his heart. And from that point, he actually became somewhat of a wicked king.
Yeah.
He was out to kill David, the very one that had delivered his nation. Killed Goliath. It really saved his kingdom. But the jealousy overrode all of the benefits of David to where he had to take him out.
That's so good. And what you're saying is, and what I'm gleaning from this, is so much of what we might be struggling with in our lives as men. Bad decisions, we're in a position where we're feeling stuck. We're not accomplishing our relationships aren't what they should be. If we're not careful, we got there because maybe of comparison and jealousy. But if you can get to the point where you start to really understand the love of God the Father for you and who you are, it frees you up. And, what we really talk about here is being intentional to make changes that your next third's your best third.
Yes.
If we can operate from that place of acceptance, adoption, where we're secure in who we are, our relationships with our spouses, with our kids, with our friends, it just all starts to fall into place. So you can redeem the past by going into the future with the proper identity.
Here's the other thing that is so important. Once you truly know that you're chosen you're beloved, you're accepted, you will never be rejected. At that point, you live from the Father's pleasure, then you can celebrate others.
Yes. You can be grateful and celebrate somebody else's accomplishments.
Celebrate it. Just your whole life shifts.
Yeah.
Because now you're not trying to gain approval, acceptance, significance. Because if we don't find our significance first and foremost as God and Father, we'll never find it anywhere else.
Yeah.
We'll strive for it. We'll achieve this, and it will be hollow.
Yeah.
Because at the very core, it really is all about receiving the Father's.
It's such a key, Richard. I know I've shared this on a previous episode, and you know my story, but I remember as a 11-year-old boy, I was sexually abused by a priest on several occasions. And I, of course, didn't know how to handle that, but the lie that was attached, and that's what happens when you're wounded, a lie gets attached, right?
Yes.
Wherever that wound comes from. The lie that was attached to me was I wasn't worth protecting. So that was an identity thing of value that I carried and affected me for years. But when I encountered the Father's love, when I really came to faith and not religion, all of a sudden I started seeing myself as like going, okay, that did happen, but it doesn't have to rule my life any longer.
Doesn't define you.
It doesn't define me, because that's not who I am, or even then who I was.
Yes.
Right? I was just believing a lie because of my pain. And I think this is such a key part of what we believe as faith is that God loves each one of you so much, He loves each and every one of you so much, and His love can transform, any circumstance. And I know this is foreign, and we don't usually get this deep on theology and faith, you hear, but it's just such a key thing to understand is, if we're going to really make the next third of our life the best third of our life, we have to get our identity straight.
I could not agree with you more. I really could not. And identity dictates how we see life, how we live life. It really, really does. A couple more stories.
Yeah, please.
About jealousy that I had not thought of. You remember when Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, was king, and these two ladies came to him, and they had this baby, and they both said, "I'm the mother." The one said, "No, I'm the mother." And they both claimed this child. And Solomon didn't know what to do. So he finally said, "I don't know which one of you are right. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll cut the baby in half. Give each of you half." Well, the real mother said, "No, don't, stop. Give the baby to her." Solomon at that point knew who the real mother was.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that is so sad. That other lady, basically, if I can't have it, nobody can.
Right.
One of the things that rules an orphan identity is, if I can't have it, nobody can. And so I will sabotage people who have it.
I'm going to throw this in. This is something, you just said something there about sabotage. I operated from an orphan identity for years because of the lies and what I believed. I didn't try to sabotage others. I sabotaged myself.
Yes.
Anytime I started getting successful, I'd make a decision to get out of that success. It was so perverted. It was so wrong. But I was operating from this "I don't deserve this" mentality, And it was also comparing, I'd be like, what I was comparing myself to was maybe not you, but I was comparing myself to this David that I'm not qualified to be. Does that make sense? So I'm looking at, if this happens, that means I'm successful, and I'm not qualified to be successful. How screwed up was that?
Well, and here's the other thing about it, and this breaks my heart. People who carry that orphan identity don't want other people to really get to know them. So they will sabotage relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it.
And I have too, and it's so sad. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, David. Everyone, according to the Bible, was born with that identity.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you're a bad person. No. This is what you were born with. But there is a solution.
That's right.
And so it really is sad. I have sabotaged myself so many times in relationships.
Yeah.
I remember there was a story of it. A church, it was a different church, but one of the staff members, he went to a meeting, and the pastor said, "Oh, so-and-so wanted me to give you this." And it was a check. And this was like 20 years ago or more. And the staff person opened it. It was $30,000.
Wow.
And that's
a ton of money back then.
That was a ton of money.
Still a ton of money, but yeah.
Basically, half your salary for the year. And it was just a gift. He said, "Why?" He said, "He just wanted to give it to you." And he would see that guy around church. And if he saw him walking down the hall, he would duck into a room.
Really?
He said, "One time, I went into the restroom and I saw he was in there. I left the restroom, went all the way around the church to a different restroom. And the Lord said, 'Why are you doing this?'" Mm-hmm. And the Lord said, "Because you think if he really gets to know you, he'll regret giving you the $30,000.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing that unfortunately dominates. Mm-hmm. It's that orphan identity.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because you had mentioned early on, and I want to kind of lead us to some action points here for the guys. Mm-hmm. But isolation, right, mm-hmm. is so dangerous for men. But getting together with men in your life who can call you on the believing the lie, can call you and say, "Hey, you're not an orphan. You're operating as one right now, and that's not who you are."
Yeah.
Right. That's where we need men who are vulnerable enough and courageous enough to speak truth to one another, but not in a condemning saying you're blowing it here, but instead saying that's not who you really are. I always say it's calling out the gold, calling them up to where they're supposed to be.
David, you hit on something so important. One of the key things about the orphan thing is they will hide. I have friends who they adopted, and they had everything. Their adopted child was given everything. But at one point they left.
Yeah.
And it was because they could not handle that amount of love because they didn't feel like they were worth it.
Yeah.
And it just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, and you hit on this, next third, best third, that will happen in community.
That's right. That's such a big key.
And outside of community, it will not happen.
No.
I shared the story. I don't know if you've shared it here, but probably 20 years ago, I was watching TV, and it was the Discovery Channel. Have I told you this story? And it was entitled Big Cats.
Okay.
And I was fascinated. I don't mind saying I like the Discovery Channel.
Nothing wrong with that.
But it showed how lions, tigers, and cheetahs hunt. And I was shocked. The way lions hunt is out on the plains. If there's a clump of trees, there'll be 4 or 5 lions hiding in the trees. And there'll be one lion out here, and there'll be a herd of gazelle or zebras. And this lion out here, all they do is they observe and they watch for one of 2 things. Either a gazelle that wanders a little bit off, and if they do, they'll find the right moment and they'll run between the gazelle and the herd to separate it.
Yeah.
And that gazelle will end up running
Yeah.
into those trees, and it's done. That's what the enemy, it says that he goes about like a roaring lion, and that's the way the lions do. Or they'll look for a wounded animal.
Sure.
And those are the 2 things that they look for, and that's what our enemy.
Well, kind of to wrap this up is what we're talking about is for a man really to be successful, to really see his life redeemed and transformed, no matter what age he's at. He has to recognize, where is he isolated and where is he wounded?
Yes.
Because if we can identify, that's that taking honest appraisal, examining our lives, taking honest appraisal, and then with intentionality, getting with other men. Because a wounded person with unresolved wounds is never going to believe the best for themselves. They're going to believe lies about their identity. And then the other one is the isolated man.
Yeah.
The isolated man is, as I've said before, that is one of the most dangerous places you can be, because you don't have anybody. There's 2 things that happens there, Richard. You don't have people in your life who can really be courageous enough to say no to you or even yes to you, right? Those 2 things, that, giving you approval or saying, hey, I don't think this is best. And then the other part about that isolated man is that he fails to invest in other people.
Yes.
And to me, that is such a key of making the next third of your life the best third, is to be investing in relationships. But if you're isolated, you don't do that. The studies have shown about depression. There's chemical depressions and all these things. That's not. But one of the key answers to depression is investing in community. Right? It's going in volunteering. It's getting involved. It's one of the most powerful things you can do, because it gets you not looking at yourself, which is what you talked about earlier, this self-made, looking at yourself the whole time and comparing. Instead, you're going out and you're saying, I'm going to invest in this person, no matter what it might be, right?
One of the telltale signs of this orphan identity is that we become extremely introspective. And we're constantly examining ourselves, and we're looking for flaws. What is wrong with me? How do I? And it's the whole self-examination, it's said. Whereas when we truly are able to receive the Father's pleasure, receive His approval, receive His adoption, then we are secure, and we begin to see people as He sees them.
That's right.
And it becomes more focused out there than it does inside.
That's good.
And that's such a big deal.
It is. So, I'm going to end with this. You had mentioned, self-examination, and yet we believe that you should take honest appraisal, examine your life. But what we're talking about, the difference thing is, instead of looking at yourself and just seeing your flaws, seeing your failures, comparing yourself to others, instead examine yourself and saying, what lies am I believing? And then what's the truth?
Yeah.
And if you're believing lies about your identity, if you're believing lies that you don't measure up, or you're not worth protecting, or nobody understands me, and you start to get in once you start to realize, wait a minute, I have value, and that value comes from the Father's love for you.
It's so much so.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing about next third, best third, that whole community. When you get into a community with people who are on the same journey,
Yeah.
and they're walking, they will see more gold in you than you see in yourself.
Absolutely.
And who doesn't want that?
We can't live without it.
We can't live without it. But in that community, the reason it's so valuable is because people, and over the years, they've seen so much more gold in me that I see in myself.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, David.
Well, I
Really,
can say
really
this,
is.
Richard. You live this message out well. You've all the years I've known you, you've always looked at other people and seen the best in them, seen the gold, not in a phony way, but really calling out what their true identity is, and that's that Father's heart of yours. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, y'all, this has been great. I hope you've enjoyed this. If, like always, if you do us a huge favor and like and subscribe, but share this, give us your comments. I know we went down a path that we normally don't tread too much, but this is a key to us as men, right? It's key to us as people is that we understand that we have value. Right? You have tremendous value, and you have a Father who loves you. So we'll see you next time on Next Third, Best Third.
Thank you.